The gunshot echoed through the canyon just as Sophia Katherine's stagecoach rounded the bend, and in that singular moment of thunder and smoke, her carefully ordered life shattered like glass hitting stone. She'd been watching the Montana landscape roll past her window, thinking about the ranch her father had built from nothing and how she was finally coming home after 2 years at that finishing school in Boston. The territory stretched wild and beautiful under the September sun of 1882, all golden grasslands and distant mountains that made her heart ache with longing. 22 years old and finally free from corsets that pinched too tight and ladies who spoke in whispers about proper deportment, Sophia had been counting the hours until she would see Bozeman again, until she could ride her horse across open country without someone telling her it was unladylike. The driver's shout of alarm came too late. 3 riders burst from the rocks ahead, their faces covered with bandanas, their revolvers gleaming in the afternoon light. The stage lurched to a violent stop, throwing Sophia against the seat hard enough to bruise. Her traveling companion, an elderly woman named Mrs. Patterson, let out a shriek that cut through the sudden chaos like a knife. "Everyone out, hands where we can see them!" The voice belonged to a tall man on a paint horse, his gun trained on the driver. 2 other riders flanked him, their weapons equally steady, equally threatening. These were not amateurs stumbling through their first robbery. These men moved with practiced efficiency, with the cold certainty of those who had done this before and expected to do it again. Sophia's hands trembled as she gathered her skirts and stepped down from the coach. The September heat hit her like a wall after the relative cool of the stage's interior. Dust swirled around her boots, settling on the deep green of her traveling dress. She lifted her chin and met the lead outlaw's eyes, refusing to show the fear that coiled in her stomach like a rattlesnake preparing to strike. "Well, well," the tall man said, his voice carrying a hint of surprise. He nudged his horse closer, looking down at Sophia with eyes that were a startling blue above his bandana. "What do we have here? You are not what I expected to find on this particular coach." "Then perhaps you should have chosen a different target for your criminal activities," Sophia said, her voice sharper than she had intended. Fear made her reckless, made her tongue loose when wisdom would have counseled silence. The outlaw laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Got some fire, do you? That is good. You are going to need it." He turned to one of his companions, a stocky man with cold eyes. "Change of plans, boys. We are taking her." "What?" "No, Mrs." Patterson stepped forward, her face pale but determined. "You cannot do this. Her father is Marcus Katherine. He owns the largest ranch in this territory. He will hunt you down like the dogs you are." "Marcus Katherine?" The tall outlaw's eyes gleamed with sudden interest. "Is that so? Well, that changes everything, does it not? Seems like we have just found ourselves something far more valuable than whatever payroll this coach is carrying." He gestured with his revolver. "You, Miss Katherine, are coming with us. Your father can decide how much you are worth to him." "I will not." Sophia planted her feet, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. "You will have to shoot me right here because I am not going anywhere with you." The outlaw sighed, and there was something almost weary in the sound. "I was afraid you would say that. Jackson, grab her. Try not to hurt her too much. She is worth more to us intact." Everything happened too fast after that. The stocky man dismounted and reached for Sophia. She fought, scratching at his face, kicking at his shins, but he was far stronger than she was. He hauled her toward a spare horse they had been leading, ignoring her struggles as if she were nothing more than a sack of grain. Mrs. Patterson's screams faded as they forced Sophia onto the horse, as the tall outlaw tied her hands to the saddle horn with practiced efficiency. "Ride hard," he told his companions. "We need to be in the high country before nightfall." They rode like demons were chasing them, pushing the horses up steep trails and through narrow defiles where the rock walls seemed to press in from both sides. Sophia tried to memorize the route, tried to leave some mental trail of breadcrumbs that might lead rescuers to her, but the landscape blurred together in a confusion of pine trees and granite outcroppings. Her wrists burned where the rope chafed against her skin. Her legs ached from gripping the saddle. But she refused to cry, refused to give these men the satisfaction of seeing her break. The sun was setting by the time they reached what appeared to be their destination, a hidden canyon deep in the mountains where a rough camp had been established. There were more men here, perhaps 6 or 7 in total, their faces hard and weathered by lives spent on the wrong side of the law. A fire burned in the center of the camp, sending smoke spiraling up toward the darkening sky. "Got a surprise, Cole," the tall outlaw said to a lean man who appeared to be in charge. "Marcus Catherine's daughter. We can ask whatever we want for her. The old man will pay." Cole looked at Sophia with eyes like chips of flint. "How much do you think she is worth?" $10,000, maybe more. Sophia's breath caught. $10,000. It was a fortune, more money than most people would see in a lifetime. Her father had money, that much was true, but even for him that sum would not come easily. He would have to liquidate assets, call in debts, perhaps even mortgage the ranch itself. "Please," she said, hating the way her voice shook, "you do not have to do this. Let me go, and I will tell my father that I escaped. I will say nothing about who took me or where you are. You can leave the territory and no one will pursue you." Cole walked toward her, his boots crunching on the rocky ground. Up close, she could see the scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, white against his tanned skin. "That's a pretty offer, Miss Katherine, but we both know you are lying. The moment we let you go, you would lead every lawman in Montana straight to this canyon." He turned to the tall outlaw. "Get a message to her father. Tell him we want $10,000 in gold. He has 3 days to get it together. We will send instructions on where to make the exchange." 3 days? Sophia felt panic rising in her throat. That is not enough time. He would need at least a week to gather that much money. "Then I suggest he moves quickly," Cole said without sympathy, "because if he does not pay, we will sell you to someone who will. There are men in this territory who would pay handsomely for a woman like you, Miss Katherine. Men who run establishments in mining camps where the miners get lonely and are not too particular about whether the women they visit came willingly or not." The threat hung in the air between them, brutal and explicit. Sophia felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. She would not cry. She would not give them that victory. They tied her to a tree at the edge of the camp, her hands bound in front of her, a longer rope securing her to the thick trunk. One of the men brought her water and a piece of hard bread, which she forced herself to eat despite the fear that made her stomach clench. She needed to keep her strength up, needed to stay alert for any opportunity to escape. Night fell over the canyon like a heavy blanket, bringing with it a chill that made Sophia shiver in her thin traveling dress. The outlaws sat around their fire, passing a bottle back and forth, their voices carrying on the still air. They talked about what they would do with their share of the ransom money, about the places they would go, the things they would buy. None of them seemed to give a thought to the terrified woman tied to a tree not 20 feet away. Sophia dozed fitfully, her head falling forward onto her chest, then jerking up again at every sound. The night was full of noises, the whisper of wind through the pines, the crack of the fire, the screech of an owl hunting in the darkness. She thought about her father, imagined him pacing the floor of their ranch house when the stagecoach arrived in Bozeman without her. He would be frantic with worry. He had already lost her mother to fever 5 years ago. The thought of losing his daughter too might break him entirely. Dawn came slowly, painting the canyon walls with shades of pink and gold. Sophia's whole body ached from sleeping upright against the tree. Her wrists were raw and bleeding where she had pulled against her bonds during the night. The outlaws stirred, kicking dirt over the fire, saddling their horses. Cole walked over to her, crouching down to study her face. "Your father should have received our message by now," he said. "I sent a rider down to Bozeman last night. If he loves you as much as you seem to think he does, he will already be scrambling to get the money together." "And if he cannot?" Sophia asked, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Then we move to our alternative plan," Cole said flatly. "And you really do not want that, Miss Katherine." The day passed with agonizing slowness. The outlaws kept her tied to the tree, giving her water and food at intervals, but otherwise ignoring her. She tried to work the ropes loose, but whoever had tied them knew their business. The knots held firm no matter how she twisted and pulled. It was late afternoon when she heard it, the distant crack of gunfire, sharp and sudden, echoing off the canyon walls. The outlaws jumped to their feet, grabbing their weapons, their faces suddenly tense. More shots followed, closer now, the sound of a firefight moving toward the camp. "What the hell?" Cole snarled, levering a round into his rifle. "How did they find us?" Sophia's heart leaped with hope, even as fear clutched at her. Someone had come. Someone was fighting to reach her. But the gunfire was so loud, so violent, and she had no way of knowing if her rescuers would survive the battle. The shooting intensified, punctuated by shouts and screams. An outlaw came running back into camp, blood streaming from his shoulder. "There is a cowboy out there," he gasped. "Just one man, but he is shooting like the devil himself. He has already killed 3 of us." "One man?" Cole's face darkened with rage. "You are telling me one man has us pinned down?" "He has got position on us, using the rocks for cover. He is picking us off one by one." Cole cursed viciously and turned to the stocky man called Jackson. "Watch the girl. If this goes wrong, put a bullet in her. She is no good to us if we cannot collect the ransom." Jackson nodded, drawing his revolver as Cole and the other outlaws rushed toward the sound of gunfire. Sophia's mouth went dry. She was going to die here, shot by a criminal in a hidden canyon where no one would ever find her body. All because she had been on the wrong stagecoach at the wrong time. But Jackson was nervous, his hand shaking slightly as he kept the gun trained on her. His eyes kept darting toward the ongoing battle, toward the place where his companions were fighting for their lives. Sophia could hear the cowboy now, could hear the methodical crack of his rifle, the lethal precision with which he was dismantling the outlaw gang. Then Jackson made his mistake. He turned his head fully toward the sound of a particularly close gunshot, and in that moment, Sophia acted without thinking. She threw herself forward, still bound to the tree, but with enough momentum to swing her legs around and sweep Jackson's feet out from under him. He went down hard, his revolver flying from his hand and skittering across the rocks. Sophia scrambled for the weapon, her bound hands making it difficult, but desperation gave her strength. Her fingers closed around the grip just as Jackson lunged at her. She pulled the trigger without aiming, the recoil nearly jerking the gun from her hands. The shot went wild, but it was enough to make Jackson throw himself sideways, giving her precious seconds to try for the knife on his belt. She got it, somehow, her fingers finding the handle as Jackson grabbed for her. She slashed blindly, felt the blade connect, heard his howl of pain. Then, strong hands were pulling her away, and a voice was saying, "Easy now, madam. I have got you. You are safe." Sophia looked up into the face of her rescuer and felt her breath catch. He was young, perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly under his hat and eyes the color of aged whiskey. Blood streaked his shirt from a graze across his shoulder, and powder burns darkened his face, but he was smiling at her with such genuine relief that she felt something flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Die de Hal." "Name is Parker Preston, madam," he said, pulling out his own knife to cut through the ropes binding her wrists. "I am a ranch hand on your father's spread. Was bringing some horses back from a buying trip in Helena when I saw the stagecoach driver come racing into Bozeman. He told everyone what had happened, said outlaws had taken you." He freed her hands and helped her to her feet, his grip gentle despite the urgency of the situation. "Your father was gathering men for a rescue party, but I knew these mountains, knew where outlaws like to hole up, figured I could move faster alone than with a whole group." "You came alone?" Sophia stared at him in disbelief. "There were 8 men here." "7 now," Parker said grimly. "And from the looks of things, you handled Jackson pretty well yourself. Can you ride, Miss Katherine? We need to get moving before the rest of them regroup." "I can ride," Sophia said, though her legs felt like water and her hands would not stop shaking. Parker must have seen it because he put a steadying arm around her waist, guiding her toward the horses. Behind them, the shooting had stopped. An eerie silence fell over the canyon, broken only by the sound of their footsteps and the nervous whickering of the horses. Parker moved quickly but carefully, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings, his free hand never straying far from his revolver. "Where are the others?" Sophia asked. "The rest of the gang?" "Dead or running," Parker said shortly. "I had to make sure they would not come after us, had to make sure you would be safe." He had killed for her. This man who barely knew her, who owed her nothing beyond the loyalty of an employee to an employer's daughter, had ridden into a death trap alone and fought his way through a gang of hardened criminals to save her life. The reality of it hit Sophia like a physical blow, leaving her breathless and shaken. Parker lifted her onto one of the horses with surprising gentleness, then swung up onto his own mount. "Hold on tight, Miss Katherine. It is a hard ride back to Bozeman, but I will get you home safe. That is a promise." They rode through the gathering darkness, pushing the horses as hard as they dared on the treacherous mountain trails. Parker seemed to know every twist and turn, every hidden path and shortcut. He kept up a steady stream of conversation, asking her questions about her time in Boston, telling her about life on the ranch, clearly trying to keep her mind off the ordeal she had just endured. "Your father talks about you all the time," he said as they paused to water the horses at a mountain stream. "Shows everyone the letters you send. He is so proud of you, Miss Katherine. The way he talks, you would think you had single-handedly tamed the entire eastern seaboard." Despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling. "He exaggerates. I mostly learned how to pour tea properly and walk with books on my head." Parker grinned, and the expression transformed his whole face, making him look younger and somehow more approachable. "Well, he will be glad to have you home regardless. The ranch has not been the same without you." "You have worked there long?" Sophia asked, realizing how little she knew about this man who had risked everything to save her. "Going on 4 years now," Parker said. "I started as a horse wrangler, working with the new stock. Your father gave me a chance when most other ranchers would not have. My own father was a gambling man, left our family with nothing but debts when he died. I had to make my own way, and Marcus Katherine was the first man who looked at what I could do instead of where I had come from." There was something in his voice when he spoke about her father, a respect and loyalty that went deeper than mere employment. Sophia found herself wanting to know more about this cowboy who spoke with such careful grammar, whose eyes held intelligence and humor alongside the hardness required to survive in this unforgiving country. They rode through the night, stopping only briefly to rest the horses. Parker insisted on keeping watch while Sophia dozed against a tree, her body finally succumbing to exhaustion. When she woke in the gray light of pre-dawn, she found him still alert, his rifle across his knees, his eyes scanning the darkness for threats that never materialized. "You did not sleep at all," she said, her voice rough with sleep. "Could not," Parker said simply. "Not until I know you are truly safe. Not until I can hand you over to your father and know that I have kept my promise." "The promise you made to me in the canyon?" "No, madam. The promise I made to myself the moment I heard you had been taken." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks that had nothing to do with the exertion of riding. "Your father is a good man, Miss Katherine. He deserves to have his daughter returned to him unharmed, and you deserve to go home." They reached the outskirts of Bozeman as the sun was climbing toward midday. The town looked exactly as Sophia remembered it. The wide main street lined with false-fronted buildings, the church steeple rising above the surrounding structures, the mountains looming in the distance like ancient sentinels. But everything felt different now, viewed through the lens of what she had survived. Word of their arrival spread like wildfire. By the time they reached the Katherine ranch, her father was standing in the yard, his face haggard with worry and lack of sleep. When he saw Sophia, he let out a sound that was half sob, half shout, and ran toward them with an agility that belied his 58 years. "Sophia, thank God!" He pulled her down from the horse and into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I thought I had lost you. When that message came, when those animals said they had taken you, I thought my heart would stop." "I'm all right, Father," Sophia said, clinging to him just as tightly. "I'm home. Parker brought me home." Marcus looked over her head at the young cowboy who sat quietly on his horse, blood-stained and exhausted, but refusing to dismount until he had completed his mission. "Parker Preston," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "you brought my daughter back to me." "Yes, sir," Parker said simply. "She is safe. That's all that matters." "Safe because of you." Marcus released Sophia and walked to Parker's horse. Looking up at the younger man with eyes that shone with tears he was not ashamed to shed. "You rode alone into an outlaw camp. You fought 8 men by yourself. You risked your life for my daughter." "Would have risked more than that, sir," Parker said quietly. "She is worth it." The words hung in the air between them, carrying a weight that went beyond simple courtesy or employee loyalty. Sophia felt her breath catch, felt something shift in her chest like the tumblers of a lock finally falling into place. The days that followed were a blur of doctors and lawmen, of tearful reunions with friends and neighbors who had feared they would never see Sophia alive again. The marshal organized a posse to hunt down the surviving outlaws, using the information Parker provided about the canyon hideout. Cole and 2 others were caught trying to flee into Wyoming. They would hang for their crimes, for the terror they had inflicted on an innocent woman. Through it all, Parker remained quietly in the background, returning to his duties on the ranch as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But Sophia found her eyes seeking him out constantly, found herself drawn to the corrals where he worked with the horses, to the bunkhouse where he took his meals with the other ranch hands. She told herself it was gratitude, nothing more. He had saved her life. Of course she would feel a connection to him, but gratitude did not explain the way her heart raced when she heard his voice, did not explain the warmth that flooded through her when his eyes met hers across the dinner table on the evenings when her father invited him to eat with them in the main house. Marcus Katherine was not a foolish man. He saw the glances his daughter and his best ranch hand exchanged when they thought no one was watching. He saw the way Sophia smiled more now, laughed more easily, seemed lighter somehow despite the trauma she had endured. And he saw the way Parker looked at his daughter when he thought Marcus was not paying attention, with a combination of longing and restraint, of hope and resignation. 2 weeks after the rescue, Marcus called Parker into his study. The younger man came reluctantly, clearly worried that he had done something wrong, that he had overstepped some invisible boundary. "Sit down, Parker," Marcus said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "We need to talk." Parker sat, his hat in his hands, his expression carefully neutral. "If this is about the horses I sold in Helena, sir, I got top price for everyone. The buyer tried to lowball me, but I held firm." "This is not about horses," Marcus said. He leaned back in his chair, studying the young man who had become invaluable to him over the past 4 years. "This is about my daughter." Parker's face went carefully blank. "Sir, I have not done anything improper. I swear to you, I know my place." "Do you?" Marcus asked. "Because from where I am sitting, it seems like you do not know your place at all. Your place, Parker Preston, is wherever you choose to make it. You are not some hired hand with no prospects. You are a skilled horseman, a brave man, and someone I trust completely." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You are also, unless I am very much mistaken, in love with my daughter." Parker's face flushed red. "Sir, I would never presume. Miss Katherine is educated, refined. She could have any man she wanted. I am just a cowboy with nothing to my name but my horse and saddle." "You are the man who saved her life," Marcus said firmly. "You are the man who rode alone into danger without a thought for your own safety. You are the man who kept his promise to bring her home. That counts for something, Parker. That counts for a great deal." "Even if it does," Parker said, his voice low, "it does not change the facts. I have no land, no money, no future to offer her." Marcus pulled open a drawer in his desk and withdrew a leather folder. "What if I told you that could change? I've been thinking about expanding the ranch, buying up some of the land to the north. It is good grazing country, has a decent water source. It would make a fine spread for someone who knew how to run it." He pushed the folder across the desk. "I need a partner, Parker. Someone I can trust to help me build something lasting, someone who could eventually take over when I'm too old to do it myself." Parker stared at the folder as if it might bite him. "Sir, I do not understand." "I'm offering you a partnership," Marcus said bluntly. 20% to start, with the option to buy more shares as the ranch grows. You would have a real stake in this operation, Parker. You would have something to build on, something to offer a wife if you were so inclined. He met Parker's eyes steadily. "I am offering you a future. What you do with it is up to you." Parker opened the folder with shaking hands, scanning the documents inside. It was all there. The terms of the partnership, the deed to the northern section, the promise of more if Parker proved himself capable. It was more than he had ever dreamed of, more than he had thought possible for a man like him. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this for me?" "Because you earned it," Marcus said simply. "Because you have proven yourself 100 times over. And because if my daughter is going to insist on falling in love with someone, I'm damned glad it is a man of honor and courage rather than some soft Eastern dandy who would not know which end of a horse to feed." Parker's head snapped up. "She told you?" "She did not have to," Marcus said with a slight smile. "I have eyes, son. And I have watched her watching you for 2 weeks now with the look of a woman who has finally found what she was looking for." He stood, walking around the desk to clasp Parker's shoulder. "Talk to her. Tell her how you feel. Let her make her own choice. I think you will be surprised by what she says." Parker found Sophia in the garden behind the main house, tending to the roses her mother had planted years ago. She looked up as he approached, her face brightening in a way that made his heart stammer in his chest. "Parker," she said, brushing dirt from her hands, "I was hoping I would see you today. I wanted to thank you again for everything you did. I feel like I have not properly expressed my gratitude." "You do not owe me gratitude, Miss Katherine," Parker said, his voice rough. "Anyone would have done the same." "That is not true, and you know it," Sophia said firmly. She stepped closer, tilting her head to look up at him. "Most men would have waited for the posse, would have let someone else take the risk, but you rode out alone. You fought for me. You brought me home." Her voice softened. "Why, Parker? Why did you do it?" He could have lied. Could have given her a dozen safe, respectable reasons that would have protected his heart, if not his pride. But standing there in the afternoon sun, with her looking at him with such openness and trust, he found he could not do it. She deserved the truth, even if it cost him everything. Péchal. Because the thought of you being hurt, of you being frightened and alone with those men, was more than I could bear, he said quietly. Because in the 4 years I have worked on this ranch, I have heard your father talk about you until I felt like I knew you. And when you finally came home, when I saw you step down from that stagecoach looking so alive and so full of fire, I knew I was in trouble." He took a breath. "I went after you because I was already half in love with you before you were even taken. The thought of losing you before I had the chance to tell you was unbearable." Sophia's eyes had gone wide, her lips parted in surprise. "You love me?" "I do," Parker said simply. "I know I have no right to. I know you could do better than a cowboy who barely has 2 nickels to rub together. But your father has offered me a partnership, offered me a chance to build something real. And before I accept it, before I take that step, I need to know if there is any chance that you could feel the same way about me. Because if there is not, if this is all one-sided, then I need to ride on. I cannot stay here and watch you from a distance, cannot torture myself with wanting something I can never have." For a long moment, Sophia said nothing. She just looked at him, her green eyes searching his face as if trying to read his soul. Then, slowly, she smiled. It started small, but grew until it lit up her entire face, until it made her look like the sun breaking through clouds after a storm. "You foolish man," she said, but there was no heat in it, only warmth and affection and something deeper that made Parker's breath catch. "Do you really think I have been following you around this ranch for the past 2 weeks out of simple gratitude? Do you think I asked my father about your past, about your dreams and hopes, because I was merely being polite? I did not know you had done that," Parker admitted, hope beginning to unfurl in his chest like spring flowers. "Well, I did," Sophia said. She closed the distance between them, reaching up to touch his face with gentle fingers. "I asked because I wanted to know everything about the man who saved me. The man who risked his life without hesitation, who rode through the night to keep me safe, who looked at me like I was something precious when I felt broken and terrified." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I've been waiting for you to say something, Parker. Waiting and hoping that what I saw in your eyes was real." "It is real," Parker said hoarsely. He caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek. "It is as real as anything I've ever felt. I love you, Sophia Katherine. I love your courage and your fire and the way you refuse to let those outlaws see you break. I love the way you talk about Boston with such stories and the way you look at these mountains like they are home. I love everything about you, and I want the chance to spend the rest of my life proving it." "Then take it," Sophia said simply. "Take the partnership my father is offering. Build something with him. Build something with me. Stay here in Bozeman and let us see what we can make of this." Parker pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her and holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "Are you sure? Once I start down this path, I'm not going to want to turn back. I'm going to want everything. Sophia, courtship and marriage and a life built together. I'm going to want to wake up next to you every morning and go to sleep with you every night. I'm going to want children and grandchildren and 50 years of growing old together." "Good," Sophia said against his chest, "because that is exactly what I want too." He kissed her then, there in the garden with the roses blooming around them and the mountains standing witness in the distance. It was a kiss that tasted of promise and possibility, of danger survived and a future just beginning. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were breathless and smiling. "We should probably tell my father," Sophia said, though she made no move to step out of Parker's embrace. "He already knows," Parker said with a laugh. "Why do you think he offered me that partnership? The man is not subtle." "No, he is not," Sophia agreed, "but he is smart, and he loves me enough to want me to be happy." She looked up at Parker with such tenderness that it made his heart ache. "You make me happy, Parker Preston. Happier than I ever thought I could be." The courtship that followed was the talk of Bozeman. Some people whispered about Sophia Katherine lowering herself to marry a ranch hand, but those whispers died quickly when it became clear that Parker was no ordinary cowboy. With Marcus's backing and his own natural skill, he proved himself an astute businessman and a capable rancher. The northern section of the Katherine spread flourished under his management, becoming one of the most productive grazing areas in the territory. But more than that, anyone who saw Parker and Sophia together could see the genuine love between them. The way he looked at her as if she had hung the moon, the way she lit up when he entered a room, the way they moved together with the easy grace of two people who had found their perfect complement. They were married in the spring of 1883 in the little church in Bozeman with what seemed like the entire territory in attendance. Sophia wore her mother's wedding dress, altered to fit her slender frame, and carried wildflowers that Parker had picked that morning from the high meadows. He wore a new suit that made him look like a stranger until he smiled at her with such love that she forgot to be nervous about all the people watching. "I promise to love you every day of my life," he said when it came time for the vows. "I promise to protect you and cherish you and build a life with you that is worth the risk you took in choosing me." "It was never a risk," Sophia said, her voice clear and strong. "It was the surest thing I have ever known. I love you, Parker Preston, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you exactly how much." Marcus Katherine cried openly during the ceremony, not bothering to hide his tears. He had prayed for his daughter's safe return, and God had given him not just that, but also a son-in-law he could respect and trust. As he watched Parker kiss Sophia with such tenderness, watched them turn to face their friends and family as husband and wife, he felt a peace settle over him that he had not known since his wife had died. The ranch prospered in the years that followed. Parker's partnership grew until he owned 40% of the operation, and talk began to circulate about him eventually taking over completely when Marcus decided to retire. But more important than business success was the family that grew in the white ranch house at the heart of the Katherine spread. Their first child arrived in the winter of 1884, a boy they named Marcus after Sophia's father. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair, and from the moment Parker held him for the first time, he was completely besotted. Sophia watched her husband rock their son to sleep on countless nights, watched him teach the boy to ride almost before he could walk, watched him pour all the love he had never received from his own father into this precious new life. "You are a wonderful father," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch, watching young Marcus chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. "I am trying to be," Parker said, pulling her close against his side. "I want him to know he is loved, that he has a secure place in this world. I want him to have everything I did not have growing up." "He has you," Sophia said simply. "That is more than enough." 2 years later, they welcomed a daughter named Katherine, who had her father's whiskey-colored eyes and her mother's spirit. She grew up wild and free on the ranch, learning to ride and rope alongside her brother, refusing to be constrained by the expectations people had for proper young ladies. Sophia saw herself in Katherine and loved her daughter fiercely for her independence. "She's going to be a handful when she gets older," Parker said one day, watching Katherine lead her pony at a gallop across the pasture, her braids flying behind her. "Just like her mother," Marcus Katherine said with a laugh. The older man had moved into a smaller house on the property, content to let Parker and Sophia run the day-to-day operations while he enjoyed his grandchildren and his well-earned rest. "Exactly like her mother," Parker agreed, smiling at Sophia with such love that it still made her breath catch after all these years. I would not have it any other way. The years rolled by with the steady rhythm of ranch life, calving in the spring, drives to market in the summer, preparation for winter when the first snow fell. Parker built the Katherine Ranch into one of the most successful operations in Montana, but he never let business consume him. He made time for his family, for long rides with Sophia up into the mountains where they had first fallen in love, for teaching his children everything he knew about horses and cattle and the land they lived on. When Montana achieved statehood in 1889, Parker and Sophia were among those who celebrated in the streets of Bozeman. They had watched the territory grow and change, had seen the wild lawlessness of the early days give way to civilization and order. The railroad had come through, bringing new people and new opportunities. Towns that had been rough collections of buildings were becoming real communities with schools and churches and futures. "Do you ever regret it?" Parker asked Sophia one night as they lay in bed, listening to the wind whistle around the eaves of the house. "Choosing this life instead of going back east. You could have married some wealthy businessman, lived in a mansion in Boston, had servants and society and all the things that finishing school was supposed to prepare you for." Sophia rolled over to look at him, her hand coming up to trace the familiar contours of his face. "Never," she said firmly. "Not once in all these years have I regretted choosing you, choosing this life. Do you know what I would have had in Boston? A comfortable cage, a life planned out for me by other people, constrained by rules and expectations that had nothing to do with who I really am." She kissed him softly. "Here, I have freedom. I have purpose. I have a partner who treats me as an equal, who values my opinions and respects my intelligence. I have children I can raise to be strong and independent. I have everything that matters, Parker. I have love." He pulled her close, overwhelmed as always by his good fortune. "I am the luckiest man alive," he said against her hair. "Every single day I wake up amazed that you chose me." "We chose each other," Sophia corrected, "and I would make that choice again every day for the rest of my life." Marcus Katherine lived to see his grandchildren grow into young adults before passing peacefully in his sleep in 1895. He died knowing that his ranch was in capable hands, that his daughter was happy and loved, that the legacy he had built would continue for generations to come. They buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains he had loved so much. "He was proud of you," Sophia told Parker as they stood by the grave. "He told me once that giving you that partnership was the best business decision he ever made, but accepting you as his son-in-law was the best personal decision." "He gave me everything," Parker said quietly. "A chance when I had nothing, trust when I had not earned it, a family when I thought I would always be alone. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift." "You already are," Sophia said, taking his hand. "You have been from the very beginning." Parker took over full ownership of the ranch after Marcus's death, but he ran it according to the principles the older man had taught him. Treat the land with respect, treat your employees fairly, and never forget that success means nothing if you do not have family to share it with. The Katherine Ranch became known throughout Montana not just for the quality of its livestock, but for the loyalty of its workers, many of whom stayed for decades because they knew they would be treated right. Young Marcus grew into a fine young man, serious and thoughtful like his grandfather, with a natural head for business that made Parker confident about the future of the ranch. Katherine, meanwhile, surprised everyone by falling in love with a doctor from Helena, a quiet man who was not intimidated by her fierce spirit and who supported her dream of starting a school for ranch children in the Bozeman area. "She gets her passion for education from you," Parker told Sophia as they watched Katherine and her fiancé stroll through the garden. "You were the one who always said these ranch children deserved the same opportunities as kids back east." "And she is going to make it happen," Sophia said with pride, "just like she makes everything happen when she sets her mind to it." The school opened in 1898, funded in part by the Katherine Ranch and in part by contributions from other ranchers who recognized the value of education. Katherine threw herself into the project with such enthusiasm that even the most traditional ranchers had to admit she had a point. Their children needed to know how to read and write and cipher, needed to understand the changing world they would inherit. Through it all, Parker and Sophia remained the steady center of a growing family and a thriving business. They added 3 more children to their brood, another son and twin daughters who were the delight of their parents' later years. The ranch house rang with laughter and arguments, with the sounds of children growing up and making their own paths in the world. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Parker took Sophia back up into the mountains, to the canyon where he had found her all those years ago. The outlaw camp was long gone, reclaimed by nature, but the place still held significance for both of them. "This is where my life truly began," Parker said, looking out over the valley below. "Not where I was born, but where I found my purpose, where I found you." "This is where I learned what it means to be saved," Sophia said. "Not just rescued from danger, but saved from a life that would never have been enough. You gave me that, Parker. You saved me in every way a person can be saved." He turned to her, this woman who had been his partner and his love for 2 decades, who had given him children and purpose and a life beyond anything he had dreamed possible. She was in her early 40s now, with silver beginning to thread through her dark hair, with laugh lines at the corners of her eyes. But to him, she was as beautiful as she had been that first day when he had cut her free and looked into her eyes and known his life would never be the same. "I love you," he said simply. "I have loved you from the beginning, and I will love you until the end. That is the one constant in my life, Sophia. You." "And you are mine," she said, stepping into his embrace as naturally as breathing. "My constant, my partner, my love, everything good in my life started the day you rode into that canyon and brought me home." They stood there together as the sun set over the Montana mountains, 2 people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life and a legacy that would endure for generations. The Wild West was changing, becoming tamer and more civilized with each passing year, but the love story that had started with an outlaw kidnapping and a lone cowboy's courage would never be forgotten. Years continued to pass, marked by the seasons and the rhythms of ranch life that had become as familiar as breathing. Parker and Sophia watched their children marry and have children of their own, watched the Katherine Ranch grow until it was one of the most respected operations in the state. But they never forgot where they had come from, never took for granted the miracle of finding each other. When Parker turned 50, Sophia organized a celebration that brought together family and friends from across Montana and beyond. The ranch was filled with people, with laughter and music and stories told late into the night. Young Marcus, now a confident rancher in his own right, stood up to give a toast. "My father taught me everything I know about running this ranch," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded room. "But more importantly, he taught me what it means to be a good man. He showed me how to work hard, how to treat people with respect, how to build something that lasts. But the most important lesson he ever taught me was this: love is worth fighting for." He proved that the day he rode alone into an outlaw camp to save my mother. He has proven it every day since with the way he looks at her, the way he puts her first, the way he has built a life around her happiness. He raised his glass. "To Parker Preston, the best father and the best man I have ever known." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Parker, uncomfortable with being the center of attention, tried to wave it off, but Sophia took his hand and held it tight. "Let them celebrate you," she whispered. "You have earned it 1,000 times over." Later, when the party had wound down and their guests had departed or retired to bed, Parker and Sophia walked out to the porch. The night was clear and cool, with stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. They sat together on the old swing Parker had built years ago, moving in gentle rhythm, comfortable in the silence that comes from decades of knowing each other. "Do you remember what you said to me in that canyon?" Sophia asked. "When you first cut me free?" "I said you were safe," Parker recalled. "I said I had you." "You have had me ever since," Sophia said softly. "From that moment to this one, through everything life has thrown at us, you have had me, and I have had you." Parker pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I think about that day sometimes," he admitted, "about how differently things could have turned out. If I had been an hour later, if the Outlaws had moved you to a different location, if any one of a dozen things had gone wrong, I might have lost you before I ever really had you." "But none of those things happened," Sophia said firmly. "You got there in time. You saved me. And we have built a life together that is worth every moment of fear, every second of danger. This is our happy ending, Parker. This right here, this moment, and all the moments we have had together. This is what matters. He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. I love you, Sophia Preston, more today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today. Forever, she whispered. That is how long I will love you. Forever. The swing continued its gentle motion, carrying them through the night, two souls intertwined so completely that it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. They had started as a woman in danger and a cowboy with a fast gun, but they had become something far more profound, partners, lovers, best friends, the center of each other's universe. As the years advanced into the new century, Parker and Sophia stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, content to let Marcus and his siblings take over while they enjoyed their grandchildren and the peace that comes from a life well lived. They traveled some, visiting Catherine and Helena, spending time with their other children who had scattered across Montana and beyond. But they always came home to Bozeman, to the ranch that had been the foundation of their life together. They would sit on that porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset over the mountains, talking about everything and nothing, simply enjoying the comfort of being together. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if I had not been on that stagecoach? Sophia asked him one evening when she was 62 and he was 65. If the Outlaws had never taken me, if you had never had the chance to rescue me. Parker was quiet for a long moment, considering the question seriously. I think I would have lived a half-life, he finally said. I would have worked the ranch, been good at my job, maybe even made some money. But I would have been alone, Sophia. Without you, without our children and grandchildren, without this family we have built together, I would have been going through the motions, but never really living. He turned to look at her, his eyes still that same warm whiskey color that made her heart skip even after all these years. You gave me purpose. You gave me love. You gave me a reason to be more than I ever thought I could be. So no, I do not wonder what my life would have been like without you, because I cannot imagine a life worth living that does not have you at the center of it. Tears pricked at Sophia's eyes, but they were happy tears. You are still a poet, Parker Preston, still able to make me cry with your words. Only speaking the truth, he said, wiping away her tears with gentle fingers. Only telling you what you should already know. You are my heart. You always have been. They celebrated their 40th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The ranch house overflowed with family, with noise and chaos and love. Parker looked around at the gathering and marveled at what they had created. All of this, all these people, all this love and life and legacy had started with a desperate rescue in a mountain canyon. What are you thinking? Sophia asked, coming to stand beside him. I am thinking that I am the richest man in Montana, Parker said, slipping his arm around her waist. Not in money, though we have done well enough, but in the things that truly matter, in family and love and the knowledge that I have lived a good life with a woman I adore. We have lived a good life, Sophia corrected gently. Together. Neither one of us could have done this alone. No, Parker agreed. We needed each other. We still need each other. As they moved into their 70s, age began to slow them down, but it never diminished their love for each other. If anything, it grew deeper and more profound with each passing year. They held hands wherever they went, finished each other's sentences, could communicate entire conversations with nothing more than a look. Their grandchildren loved to hear the story of how they met, never tiring of the tale of outlaws in danger and a cowboy who rode to the rescue. Parker and Sophia would tell it together, trading off sections, sometimes disagreeing on the details, but always agreeing on the essentials. They had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances, and they had built a love that would outlast them both. Tell us about the canyon, Grandpa, the children would beg. Tell us how you saved Grandma. And Parker would tell them, making sure they understood that while the rescue was dramatic, the real story was what came after. The real story was learning to love someone so completely that you could not imagine life without them. The real story was building a partnership based on trust and respect and genuine affection. The real story was choosing, every single day, to put someone else's happiness alongside your own, and finding that in doing so, you doubled your own joy. Parker passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1925, just 3 months after his 88th birthday. He died as he had lived his later years, with Sophia beside him, her hand in his, their fingers intertwined even in sleep. When she woke that morning to find him gone, she did not scream or wail. She simply held his hand tighter and whispered, "Wait for me, my love. I will be along soon." She lived another 2 years without him, surrounded by family but feeling the absence of her partner like a physical wound. She told her children and grandchildren stories about Parker, keeping his memory alive, making sure they understood what kind of man he had been and what kind of love they had shared. "He saved me," she would say, "not just from those outlaws, but from a life that would never have been enough. He gave me purpose and passion and a partnership that sustained me for more than 40 years. He was my great love, the center of my world, and I have been blessed beyond measure to have had him in my life." Sophia Katherine Preston died in the winter of 1927, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, their faces blurred as her vision failed, but their love palpable in the room. Her last words were, "Tell him I am coming. Tell Parker I am finally coming home." They buried her beside him on the hill overlooking the ranch, with a view of the mountains that stretched toward forever. The headstone was simple but profound. Parker and Sophia Preston, partners, lovers, friends. Their love story began with danger and courage and lasted a lifetime. The Katherine Ranch continued to prosper under the management of their descendants, each generation adding their own chapter to the story while honoring the foundation that Parker and Sophia had built. And though decades passed and the Wild West became nothing more than history, the story of the cowboy who paid in lead to bring his love home safely was never forgotten. It was told around dinner tables and campfires, passed down through generations as proof that true love exists, that courage matters, and that sometimes the greatest adventures lead us exactly where we were always meant to be. In the end, theirs was a love story for the ages, born in danger, forged in courage, and sustained through decades of partnership and devotion. It was a testament to the power of choosing someone completely, of building a life together one day at a time, of never taking for granted the miracle of finding your perfect match. Parker and Sophia Preston had lived fully and loved deeply, and their legacy endured long after they were gone, a reminder that the best stories are the ones that are true, and that the greatest treasure anyone can find is not gold or land, but the heart of someone who loves you completely in return.